anything like this.
Peace be with you, the proclaimer of the good news.
Glory to you, O Lord. Glory to you.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, good morning. Christ is in our midst. So here we are, the second Sunday of Holy and Great Lent, and the church has given to us a reading, and this is a reading that we've seen before. In fact, we hear about the paralytic twice in the year, but this is a reading that we have especially because if you look at the original Greek, the words that are used are so beautiful. Why? Because the words have everything to do with what this Great Lent is about. First, he says to him, Aaron. In other words, pick up your pallet and walk. And he uses the word Aaron. And Aaron is one of those Greek words that we're also going to hear next week when we say, pick up your cross and follow me. And when we hear it again in the hymn. So there is something to you and for me that we have to pick something up, right? And you and I are doing that this whole week. Time of Great Lent, you and I are doing everything that we can to pick up and follow. But if we've been doing it right, by now we might have seen that we're already fallen flat on our faces and that we have already failed, that maybe we haven't been patient enough, forgiving enough, loving enough, haven't fasted well enough, all these things. In fact, we're just like that paralytic. We made our bed and we're lying in it. And boy, am I lying in mine, let me tell you. But there are 4 beautiful friends that come to his aid. And St. Gregory Palamas says to us, whom we celebrate today, by the way, he says to us, those 4 friends and their faith helped create a miracle. But it isn't just the 4 friends. He said, in my opinion, this is St. Gregory Palamas saying, in my opinion, also that paralytic still had faith. But it was the 4 with the paralyzed man. It's the church with each one of us. It's us not by ourselves, but we are all here together. And that's why we're praying and we're going through Great Lent together. That's why Christ sent them out 2 by 2 on the road. We cannot do Lent alone. We need to go to our spiritual father for confession. We need our friends to help us learn everything about not being slothful, not having faint-heartedness, as St. Ephraim's prayer says, not doing vain talk or gossip. We need one another to help each other. And so these 4 friends are getting up, right? And they're taking their friend. You're paralyzed. We know who can help you. And it's amazing, they go through everything. I mean, they come and it says that he's at a house. It's not his house, it's a house. And if you read another gospel, we know whose house it is. Does anybody know? Anybody? Whose house is he? Huh? Nope, not Zacchaeus' house. That's another time. But whose house do you think he is in? Not Lazarus? Good guess. He goes to see how many houses he goes to? He goes to Zacchaeus' house. He goes to Lazarus' house. He wants to come to your house and my house. But this time, whose house is he at? Peter. St. Peter's house. In which city? Capernaum. And you know, St. Gregory Palamas, whom we celebrate today, also says it was his hometown. Because Nazareth was not accepting him because a prophet's not welcome in his own home. And they said, we saw you grow up and it's so hard. So believe it or not, after he was tempted in the desert and after something, he would go to Capernaum. It was his second home. Your church, my church, this is our second home. And St. Peter's house was a real home for him. And everybody was there. So much so it says that they couldn't get into the house. They couldn't get in. So what did they do? Tell me. Can you imagine going up on the roof? Can you imagine taking off the tile of this church? No. Can you imagine taking the tile off of your home? And yet they did not stop doing everything to get their friend right in front of Jesus. And that's what Great Lent is also about. We will not stop doing everything to get ourselves right in front of Jesus. It's amazing, isn't it? It's amazing. But they get him down in front of Jesus, and their friends are all thinking, and maybe even the man who's paralyzed, it's done. It's a done deal. But Jesus is the one who sees your heart and mind. And this is something that especially for our young kids, a lot of time our young kids think, if only that person was nicer to me, or if that girl looked at me, or if that teacher understood me. We always go, if only this would change outside, everything would be fine. But everything about Great Lent is not about putting the power on the outside. It's realizing it all has to come from God on the inside, going out. Because the outside is free. It's about us now. What can I do? What can I own and do? And so Jesus looks right into the heart of the paralytic, and he knew that he's paralyzed largely because of his sin. And he knows what he wants. He says, your sins are forgiven you. It has to come from the inside out. The heart pure and clean. The sins wiped away. Your mind at peace and content. At peace because God is in charge. At peace because we can give it to God. And that's what he gives to this man. Your sins are forgiven you. That was everything. And then this is the choice that I want you to understand and what becomes the strength of Great Lent in our faith. Get this. Theologizunde, in other words, questioning in their hearts now, are who? The scribes and the Pharisees right there in that house. Those who are of the spiritual authority, who seem to think they are questioning, doubting, wondering, and go, who are you to forgive sins? Only God can forgive sins. In Hebrews, it says, if you hear the voice of God today, do not harden your hearts, Hebrews 3:4. If you hear the voice of God today, do not harden your heart. They're questioning and they're hardening their hearts. They're not compassionate that here is a paralyzed man that may see forgiveness of sins and to say, me too. I'd love to have forgiveness of sins. But rather than that and expanding to the graciousness and the love of God, they are constrained. And they're saying, who are you to forgive sins? And the Lord knows inside of their hearts. This is the beautiful thing. Just like he could see inside of the heart of the paralytic, he saw their hearts. And he's not mad. He says, why do questionings rise in your heart? And this word is used again. At the Sunday of Forgiveness, we use this word again. And we use this word again and when you think of Eve, when she's questioning in her heart because the serpent is causing her to doubt God. Because why are questionings rising in your heart? Even this morning, the same thing was happening with the Orthodox gospel and the resurrection. And Jesus is appearing in front of them and he says, I'm risen. And then the disciples were like, he goes, why are questionings rising? Here I am. I'm not a spirit. I'm flesh and blood. Give me something to eat. And they gave him broiled fish on a honeycomb. Why do I say this? When Great Lent happens, questionings might rise. do the best that you can to go back to Christ and get that peace and that strength. Now, this is something that I want you to pay attention to. That paralytic heard that his sins are forgiven. That paralytic is also hearing the scribes and the Pharisees and their muck-a-muck, if you will. They're being upset, their issues with Jesus, and a little argument. Got it? Who is the spiritual authority? Who's that spiritual authority? It's Jesus. But you know what? In that society, it was the scribes and Pharisees. So now the paralytic has to make a choice. Why? Because the choice is, and my battery is dying. So this is going to go very fast. Okay? So what's the choice? Do I believe that I can be forgiven? Do I believe in Jesus Christ? Or do I believe in these other authorities? Because Jesus said, "Egion," or "egide," and "amo," which means resurrect. The same word used for resurrection. Rise, resurrect, and take up your path. If he were to rise, he's making a choice for Jesus over the scribes and the Pharisees in public. Can you and I do that? Can you and I do that? Today, when the kids are going to be doing Sunday school and they're going to be doing the Passover, they will have the act in public. Put the lamb of the blood of the blood of the lamb on your doorpost, in your house. Do they do that? You and I not only are to receive, but at times we have to stand up and make sure that Jesus Christ's words are loudest and of all, and that we stand up and so believing in the words of Jesus. And the greatest of all hopes that he is forgiven and maybe and walk, he does resurrect. Egide te Adam, and he took his power and he walked in front of everybody. St. Gregory Palamas says, why did Jesus say to him to pick up that power? Why did he say leave it behind? And St. Gregory Palamas, we celebrate today, is because that's part of the glory. The thing that got me down, and I want you to think about the thing that paralyzed me. The thing that destroys me, whether it's alcohol, whether it's lying,